Somebody threw this out on the internet. Internet's a crazy place. Jets should pursue Russell Wilson, right or wrong? Wrong, right? I mean, like, there's no way they should do that.
And the internet
That's
was
crazy.
Unanimously supportive, Dan.
I'll bet it was.
So here's the context of what I'm saying. The Jets last year, of all the things that happened, they missed big time on a backup quarterback. They need a veteran quarterback who's going to be inexpensive. And at some point, Russell Wilson's going to have to determine, do I want to keep playing? And if I want to play, I need to resurrect my career. I'm not going to be a starter. So to me, for 1 year, this is a marriage of convenience. And if I'm the Jets with a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers coming off of an Achilles tendon injury, they can't count on him playing 17 games. 66 different quarterbacks started. It is a little bit out of the box, but this could work for 1 year, because who else are the Jets going to get that works under their salary cap?
Well, look, I had my chance on this yesterday. Harry, what do you think about the Jets getting Russell Wilson to back up Aaron Rodgers?
Well, look, what time is it, guys? It's 8:49 a.m.
Yeah.
Mike T about to make me go downstairs in my bar and take a shot of tequila. Mike T, please stop.
So who's your backup quarterback for the Jets?
I mean, any number of people.
It won't be Russell Wilson.
Jeff.
Won't be Russell.
A marriage of convenience? A marriage of, what is this? First of all, are they polygamists? They're already married to Aaron Rodgers. You can't bring in another Russell Wilson, another alpha.
You bringing in a side piece?
Mike T.
You bringing in a side piece and Russell Wilson when Aaron Rodgers is supposed to be the main piece? How do you think Aaron Rodgers is going to feel about that?
Here's a point we didn't make on yesterday's show. Who's the offensive coordinator for the Jets?
Well, apparently Aaron Rodgers is the head coach, the GM.
Who is the offensive coordinator?
By title, it's Nathaniel Hackett.
Do he and Russell Wilson know each other? Have they worked together before?
Right. Again, my point is this.
Might have been the worst offense in the history of football.
And Russell Wilson is going to be out there in May. And if you're the Jets, again, let's go back. The Cleveland Browns had 4 different starting quarterbacks, won 11 games. Joe Flacco played good football. The Jets missed on Zach Wilson, and that really cost them their season last year. So the point I'm making here is, given their cap constraints, given the fact they need an offensive lineman and a wide receiver, they need somebody that could check all those boxes at quarterback. And I can't think of a lot of other salary cap friendly veteran quarterbacks that could come in and hold the fort for 3 to 4 games the way someone like Russell Wilson could.
Yeah, look, we all agree that the Jets need to have a better backup quarterback situation than they had last year. But we also all agree, other than Mike, that this is not the guy. Harry, what else do the Jets need? Like, if you're running the Jets, other than backup quarterback, what else would you do for the Jets this offseason?
Well, I think if the Jets want to do anything, the offensive line is at the forefront more than any position in the National Football League. You talk about if you can't protect Aaron Rodgers, they were tied for 3rd with the most sacks given up amongst their offensive line. So if you can't protect Aaron Rodgers, who we know can be deadly throwing the football, but he's coming off an Achilles injury. If you can't protect your quarterback, you don't have a shot. So offensive line needs, they have to secure that up and make sure Aaron Rodgers is protected in 2024.
Jeff, what do you think the Jets need most other than Russell Wilson?
Completely agree. I mean, they could put Russell Wilson in offensive line. They need offensive line. If Aaron Rodgers gets hurt again, it doesn't matter. I'm not one of these people who's convinced. Yes, cool. Joe Flacco did a nice job with the Browns. The Jets are all in with Aaron Rodgers. I am not one of these people who think that if they had a better backup this past season that they're in the Super Bowl. It's either Super Bowl or bust when they signed Aaron Rodgers. They need more offensive line. Any money should not be devoted toward the backup quarterback. It should be devoted toward the offensive line.
And that's why Russell Wilson at $1 million actually makes sense. Jeff, thanks for making my point.
Now you're negotiating for him.
Right into it, Jeff. Russell Wilson, of course, getting that $39 million from the Broncos no matter what.
I love, by the way, that Mike T just is leaning in. Like, I respect that. Just gets crushed on the internet for this take, and he's leaning in with great context.
You have to admire.
Just go by the facts.
You have to admire his conviction.
It's the Atlanta Falcons. If he gets out of Minnesota, again, he can't be franchised. So if they don't get a deal done, we've talked all morning about all these great weapons that Atlanta has and haven't had good quarterback play. I know he's a little bit older at 36. I know he's coming off of the injury, but boy, what a massive upgrade Kirk Cousins would be for the Atlanta Falcons with Bijan Robinson and Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I think it would be a really fun offense to watch. I'd be surprised if he didn't get a deal done with Minnesota, but if he does, Atlanta should be all over him.
Yeah, Cousins' season, as you mentioned, cut short because of that Achilles injury he suffered in Week 8. But up to that point, he was having one of his best seasons. You see these numbers, best numbers since 2016 and 2018 in some cases. Also got Minnesota out of a 1-4 hole and back to 500 before that injury occurred. As Mike mentions, he will be 36 next season. The Vikings cannot franchise him because of a quirk in his contract. Jeff, do you think that Kirk Cousins' time in Minnesota has come to an end?
It feels like that, Dan. Look, I see a market for quarterbacks, and I see a quarterback who has a history of playing the market perfectly. Kirk Cousins has done such an exceptional job when he came out of Washington, timing it perfect the way he played that, and now he's doing it again. We've talked about a number of destinations that would make sense because Kirk Cousins is still viewed around the league as a stabilizer. If you don't think that you can get a franchise quarterback who's going to change you this season, and there's a number of teams out there who've got to be looking at this, they'll say Kirk Cousins can stabilize what we're trying to do. So I ultimately think he's going to have the type of market that is lucrative enough to pull him away from Minnesota. So yeah, I do think this is the time when Kirk Cousins goes to another team.
Harry, what do you think about Cousins leaving Minnesota?
I think Minnesota is the best fit for him. Honestly, when you look at what Kirk Cousins was able to do before he got hurt, you look at their first 4 losses. They had 10 turnovers. They couldn't even hold on to the football. And I'm not saying Kirk Cousins was the main culprit in that. It was guys fumbling the football, not being able to hold on to it. And they lost all 4 of those games. And we're talking about a Minnesota Vikings team that was still fighting for a playoff berth toward the end of the year. So I think Minnesota is the best fit for him. You have a Justin Jefferson, a Jordan Addison they drafted in the first round. They just paid T.J. Hawkinson. But I like Kirk Cousins in Minnesota.
Jeff mentioned it, Mike. Cousins has played the contract game beautifully. He got the fully guaranteed deal last time he was a free agent. If you're thinking about signing Kirk Cousins, what do you expect that contract to look like this time around?
You know, ironically, average per year, probably in the same range, Graz, somewhere between 35 and 40 million a year. I don't think it's fully guaranteed just because of the age and the injury. And if he could get it, he goes into the Business Hall of Fame. That would be stunning. But look, it would only take one team. What's interesting to me is where does Minnesota draw the line and when do they draw it? Because if he gets to free agency, if we're running the Vikings, we have to assume he's gone. And to me, next plane to Atlanta. So there is a sense of urgency between now and the combine. Whatever they can do, make their best offer, and then they have to be prepared to move forward without him.
Harry?
To Mike T's point about mentioning Atlanta, we do also have to understand that Zach Robinson is not an offensive coordinator. He came from the Los Angeles Rams. Kirk Cousins has played in this offense with Kevin O'Connell, who also came from the Los Angeles Rams as well. So he would fit into that offense and understand everything from top to bottom being thrusted into the starting lineup if he did end up in Atlanta. So I want to point that out.
Yeah. One thing's for sure, as has become the case very often in recent off seasons, Kirk Cousins is in a good spot. We wanted to make some bold predictions with regard to franchise tags and free agents this year. So Mike T, start us off with a bold prediction.
Derrick Henry plays for the Cowboys, and I think Tony Pollard graduates. It didn't work out great. And again, I think he's the ultimate closer. We've talked about Dallas a lot today. They can score points, we know that. But there's a great axiom, Graz, that applies here, which is you pass to score and run to win. And who's going to want to tackle that player in the fourth quarter when your defense is already worn down?
So far in his career, the answer has been nobody. Jeff, what's your bold prediction for the franchise tag window?
Well, I'll say T. Higgins gets tagged, not very bold, but ultimately gets traded, very bold. And I think the reason here would just be this. If that were to happen, it would be probably because T. Higgins makes very clear that he is not playing on that tag. Now, maybe he does. It's good money. He could do that. But coming off an injury this year, probably isn't very thrilled about the idea of putting himself out there on a one-year deal and perhaps potentially getting injured again. There is a market out there for wide receivers. The Bengals could store some serious collateral and then get the Jamar Chase deal done as well.
Harry, what's your bold prediction?
My bold prediction that the Indianapolis Colts, they're going to let Michael Pittman Jr. walk and sign Mike Evans. You're talking about a guy that's been one of the most consistent across the board in the history of the National Football League, eclipsing 1,000 yards in all 10 years, being a wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Also, when you look at Mike Evans, 3 of the last 4 years, 3 of those years, he had 13 touchdowns or more. You talk about a guy that has a catch radius, will be another dynamic, a veteran, Super Bowl winning wide receiver that he can add some veteran leadership to that team as well. Anthony Richardson will be coming back off an injury, and now you have a guy that you can really get the football to in those regards.